Hey, my name is Shane, and I want to tell you about something I love about this season. See, Christmas is my favorite time of year. Maybe it's that way for you too, or maybe not. That's okay. But one of the things that I love about the season is actually something I did as a kid. And that was wake up Christmas morning and then rip into whatever presents I did get that year that were under the tree. See, I would just start grabbing stuff, rip it apart. There was wrapping paper everywhere, boxes, because I just needed to get to that remote control car or that new baseball equipment and then get outside and start playing with it. I didn't even think about the mess that I left. In fact, I didn't even really know who cleaned up that mess until I became a parent. Now I have 4 kids of my own, and I know exactly who cleans up that mess. See, Christmas can be like that. Sometimes it's just a mess. And I'm not talking about wrapping paper or boxes. It can be a mess relationally or circumstantially. And that, my friends, that's what we're talking about today. Sometimes Christmas brings the messes to the surface of our life. It's stuff that's already been going on, but this time of year, it just comes to the top. For example, maybe we've been lonely for a while, but once Christmas break hits and we don't have the regular routines and schedules to distract us, that loneliness starts to sink in. Or it seems like we come across endless pictures of happy couples at Christmas time, and it reminds us that we're by ourselves. Things have been falling apart at home for a while, or they're already broken and fractured, and then Christmas brings all of that back to the front and center because maybe we're spending more time at home than we do normally. It's a reminder of someone who's gone or someone who's struggling. Maybe Christmas time is just too much unstructured time in the same place. And then this season becomes a time for old habits to come crawling back. Sometimes we try to fix and control things as quickly as possible so that everything stays in order. We try to manage the mess. For example, we manage our image. We post things that make it seem like family life is perfect for us, but we know we can't control the mess in our family. So we try to manage what we portray on Instagram or TikTok or anywhere else. We make sure that everything looks just right. Maybe we manage expectations. We try to do everything that we can to keep everyone happy. And we feel like we're the ones who are responsible to make sure that everyone gets along. Maybe you're in the middle of 2 divorced parents and you feel the need to keep the peace at Christmas time and you feel like it's your responsibility. Sometimes we try to manage relationships. We use all kinds of tactics to try to get people to do what we want them to do. We manipulate, and we say things like, I can't believe that you would act like that. Or we tell our parents, you're ruining my Christmas break. We play the victim, we ignore people, we yell at people, whatever it takes to manage the people around us. Or we try to manage our behavior. Maybe some of you find control by doing everything perfectly. You do exactly what your parents expect from you. Maybe some of you are the opposite. You act out in negative ways in order to show the authority figures in your life that they're not in control of you. I mean, this list could go on and on. We all have ways of managing the messes, especially during the holidays. But the good news is that what we're going to talk about today, it's not only helpful in the areas where we try to manage the messes, it's helpful in all other areas of life too. And it has the potential to really change the game on how we view things this Christmas season. If you're unfamiliar with the Bible, no worries at all. I'm going to bring you up to speed really quickly. It's divided into 2 sections. There's the Old Testament and there's the New Testament. And the Old Testament, they're books of the Bible that record what happened before Jesus walked the earth. The New Testament consists of the books that account from the time that Jesus walked on the earth and beyond. But ultimately, whether it's Old Testament or New Testament, they all point to Jesus. Every book of the Bible points to Jesus. And the first 4 books of the New Testament are called the Gospels. They're the accounts of the life of Jesus when he lived among us. And these books are important because they're all about him. They're all about Jesus. And this is huge because Jesus was God. Jesus was God in a human body. So if we want to see what God is like, all we have to do is look at Jesus. And Matthew is the first gospel. And in it, Matthew records what happened after Jesus was born. Let me break it down like this. It's the traditional Christmas story. That's chapter 1 of Matthew. If there's a nativity scene at your grandma's house or somewhere else, that's what chapter 1 is all about. Jesus is born in a cave. Mary, Joseph, and some animals, they were all gathered around, like that little donkey or the sheep in the nativity set. I mean, this is what Christmas plays are all about. And today, we're going to turn the page to chapter 2 of Matthew. Literal chapter 2 of Matthew starts like this. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod. Okay, so now we learn about the guy who's in charge when Jesus was born, and that's King Herod. He's called Herod the Great. I mean, he crushed opposition. That's why he was called Herod the Great. I mean, he was wealthy, he was smart, he was strong, he did some brilliant things, but he was also in love with his power. I mean, he had fits of rage and jealousy, and those led him to do all kinds of things. Okay, now, verse 1 continues. Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." Okay, so some wise men come to town, and maybe they've also been in like your grandma's nativity scene, or if you've ever seen a picture of like the Christmas story, you've seen these three wise guys. They're definitely a part of the Christmas story, but they're more chapter 2 than chapter 1. See, when they show up, they want to know where the Messiah is. The Messiah is the leader that the Jewish people had been waiting for, that would solve their problems and would help them break free from the people that ruled over them. I mean, the Messiah was a really big deal, and Jesus is that Messiah, and he came for all people. Now, stop and think about that for just a second. Jesus, who is God in a human body, like I said earlier, Jesus came to earth. Like, God came to earth and dealt with all the human things that you and I deal with. I imagine Jesus dealt with things like bruises, stress, puberty, even pimples. In fact, after Jesus came to earth, lived, died, and then came back to life, one of his earliest followers explained it all this way. This follower's name was Paul, and he wrote it down. Let me read it to you. In his very nature, he was God. Jesus was equal with God, but Jesus didn't take advantage of that fact. Instead, he made himself nothing. He did this by taking on the nature of a servant. He was made just like human beings. King Jesus came with humility in order to help us. And as we go back to the Christmas story, that's who the Magi are looking for. They're asking, where's Jesus, the man that people are expecting to save and lead them, the Messiah, like we just talked about. We want to worship him. Well, Matthew continues. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed. And by this, Matthew means the news that another king had been born. Because just like that, the current king is now threatened. Herod was in charge, and now there was competition. I mean, there can't be two kings. The last thing Herod wanted was to lose control. His control of the kingdom, his future, his wealth, and his power. So he panicked. And now, wait, before we judge, let's all admit that in some ways, you and I, we do that too. I mean, we try to manage the mess, and when we feel like we're losing control, especially control of what's going on around us, we don't like it. When we can't manage the image and people find out that our family isn't perfect, we hate it. When there's too much unknown and it feels out of our control, we feel anxious. When we can't manipulate people into doing what we want, we get angry. When we can't make everyone happy and be everywhere at once, we feel overwhelmed. We don't like our sense of control being messed with. That's what happened to Herod. In fact, Herod slowly started unraveling. He went to the wise men with a really sneaky plan. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." Okay, Herod obviously had no desire to worship Jesus. I mean, he would have immediately had Jesus killed. Let's just be honest about it. And the good news is the wise men never came back to Herod, and they never sent him a report. All they did was see Jesus, celebrate him, and then they went back to their hometowns. And when Herod realized that his little plan didn't work, he absolutely lost it. And he did something so horrible. Like, it turns my stomach to even think about. He ordered for kids 2 and under who could possibly fit Jesus' description. He ordered that they should be killed. Was his plan successful? Of course not. Did it create a lot of pain and chaos? Absolutely. Now, I want to be really clear. I know Herod's example, it's really extreme, but there's something in the story that we can't miss. Herod represents what happens when we try to be Lord of our own lives. When you think about it, this story is really a tale of 2 kings. King Herod was concerned about losing his throne. He wanted to protect and maintain it. But King Jesus arrived in a manger to invite everyone to a new and better kingdom. King Herod created a temporary fear-based solution, but King Jesus came to offer a permanent solution to rescue the world from chaos. King Herod made things messier. King Jesus came to bring peace. King Herod felt threatened by Jesus, but King Jesus felt no threat. He came to help Herod and all of humanity get rid of those unhealthy things in his heart and our hearts and become the fullest version of ourselves. When we think that following Jesus is about losing ourselves, it can feel threatening. But when we realize that Jesus came so that we could finally have real joy, peace, hope, and love, that is when everything changes. Herod obviously never realized this, and his life ended in a sad way. He was never going to be king forever, no matter what he tried. I mean, he wanted to make it all happen on his own. He tried to manage the mess, but it didn't work, and it never does. And the same that was true for him that first Christmas is true for me and for you today. Think of it this way. You weren't meant to be the one that keeps it all together. You weren't meant to be the master of the mess. You want to fix things and control things. Me too, I get it, but that's what makes Christmas so powerful. It's not about us keeping things together in our own power. It's about focusing on the one and only one who can truly lead us to life the way that it's supposed to be. It's the King who was born and placed in a manger, the King who, out of love for you and for me, came and moved into our neighborhoods, came and lived with us. But what could that look like in the middle of any messes that we're currently facing? Here's just a couple of ideas. Maybe for you, you could decide to loosen your grip. This is what Herod failed to do. He was so intense and worried and anxious and threatened that he let the worst parts of him get the best of him. We think that controlling and managing things takes away anxiety, but in reality, it has the potential to increase our anxiety. When we learn to let go and put it in the hands of God, we can actually feel more peace and rest. Let's say that I put my hand in this delicious jar of candy. I love M&Ms. If I reach in and grab some, but I keep my hand gripped tight, I can't get it out. But if I let go and I just open my hands up, I can pour some into my hand and enjoy it. Like I said, it's super simple. But sometimes the things that we think that we're gonna get from control and order, things like peace and security, those actually show up through letting go. And it's such a less exhausting way to live. Here's what I think we should all do. I think we should trust the King who humbled himself. Jesus is secure enough in who he is to be the humble King. Out of his love for us, he came to earth, lived his life among us to show us the loving heart of God, then displayed his ultimate love by dying on a cross for our sins. We can let go and trust him with anything and everything in our lives. In a perfect world, all the messes would just magically go away. But as we learn through Herod, that doesn't work. And this Christmas, we have a God who is right there with us in the middle of the mess. God is present, God is loving, and God is so powerful. You weren't meant to be the one that keeps it all together. God can manage that mess this holiday season. You don't have to be king or lord of your life. That's God's job. And after all, God is much better at it than we are. So when you head to group, think about your answer to this question. Is there anything in life that you're trying to control right now?